I thought love meant staying when things got hard. When my fiancé needed a caretaker, I welcomed him into our home like family. I trusted him. I trusted her more. That was my first mistake. One night, I heard a conversation through a half-closed door that didn't sound like love, and didn't sound like care either. It sounded like a choice being delayed. She didn't want to lose me. She didn't want to lose him. And somehow, she thought she deserved both. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I stayed quiet and watched, because silence shows the truth faster than anger ever can. By the time she realized I had already stepped back, it was too late to fix anything. Some betrayals don't end with revenge. They end with absence, and that hurts more. I can't believe you're actually up, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Emily gave me a weak smile, the kind that barely reaches her eyes. I told you I'd manage, she whispered, her voice fragile. Ryan, her caretaker, stood beside her chair, adjusting her blanket. She had a rough night, but she's holding up, he said casually, though I caught a flicker of something in his eyes I didn't understand. I'll make coffee, I said quickly, trying to push the unease away. You need energy. Today's, well, you know, a busy day. Emily chuckled softly, but it sounded empty. You always try too hard. Ryan nodded in agreement, but his eyes lingered on me longer than necessary. I felt my chest tighten. I shook it off. I'm imagining things, I told myself. Later, while I sat at the kitchen table stirring my coffee, Emily called out, "Can you grab that book on the shelf, please?" Of course. I reached for it, pretending nothing had changed. Ryan helped her adjust, his hand brushing hers ever so slightly. My stomach sank, but I forced a smile. So, I started, trying to sound casual, "How was your sleep?" "Better than I thought," Emily replied. Her gaze darted toward Ryan for a second, just a second, before returning to me. I noticed the pause. I wasn't sure why it made me uneasy, but it did. "You're quiet today," I said to Ryan, trying to include him. "Just focused," he said, eyes sharp. "I like to make sure Emily's comfortable." I nodded. "Yeah, of course. You've been a lifesaver." There it was again, the slight flicker of something in Ryan's expression. Relief? Or something else? I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. By midday, Emily and I were sitting in the living room. I watched her carefully, noting every expression, every hesitation. "I think I'll rest a little," she said suddenly. "Don't overdo it," I warned, and Ryan moved closer to help her adjust. My chest tightened again. "Don't be paranoid," I muttered under my breath. But part of me already knew I wasn't. The day dragged slowly. Every time I left the room for a phone call, I felt them exchange glances. Quick, subtle, almost invisible, but I noticed. I hated myself for noticing. "Ryan," I said later, leaning casually against the doorframe as if I didn't care, "how long have you been taking care of Emily?" "Since the accident," he said smoothly. "A few months now." "And you think she's improving?" I asked, watching him closely. "She's resilient," he said, looking directly at me. "You should be proud of her." "I am," I said, forcing a laugh. "She's my fiancée." "Of course I am." Emily's laugh floated from the living room, soft and distant. I felt my stomach twist. That laugh wasn't the same as it had been before the accident. It carried something else, a strange lightness I couldn't place. That night, after dinner, I went to check on Emily. She was sitting in her chair, reading. Ryan was nearby, arranging some papers on the table. "You're still awake?" I asked. Emily looked up. "I couldn't sleep." "Need anything?" I moved closer, pretending to be casual. Ryan smiled. "I'll make sure she's comfortable." I swallowed hard. Something about the way he said it, it wasn't just professional. I told myself I was imagining things. Later, I heard her call his name softly. Ryan. What is it? He replied, calm. I can't decide, she said, almost a whisper. I don't want to hurt either of you. I froze. My heart pounded. My coffee cup trembled in my hands. What do you mean? Ryan's voice was low, controlled. I don't want to lose either of you, she said again. I stepped back. My chest tightened. That wasn't the sentence I was expecting. That wasn't the sentence I was supposed to hear. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, listening, my mind racing, stomach twisting. Silence filled the room as the words lingered. When I finally blinked, she was looking at him, and he was looking back. Something shifted, subtle but undeniable. The energy between them was different. Not like friends. Not like caretaker and patient. Something else. I shook my head. No, I told myself. I'm overthinking. I must be. But the doubt had planted itself deep in my chest. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning everything I thought I knew. Every glance, every smile, every casual touch replayed in my mind like a warning I couldn't ignore. I didn't confront them. I didn't yell. I didn't leave. I just stayed, quiet, watching, pretending. But my heart knew something had changed. And by the time I finally went to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that the life I thought I had, my perfect engagement, my trust in Emily, even my respect for Ryan, was already slipping away. I wasn't supposed to be up that late, but sleep had abandoned me. Something about the way Emily had spoken earlier, the hesitation in her voice, the way Ryan's eyes lingered, kept replaying in my mind. I needed air. I stepped into the hallway, careful not to make a sound. From the corner of the living room, the door to Emily's bedroom was half closed. I froze. That familiar, soft murmur drifted out. Ryan, her voice trembled, almost desperate. Yes, he answered, calm, too calm. I don't know how to choose, she whispered. Choose what? His tone was measured, steady. I don't want to hurt either of you. I don't want to lose either of you, she said again. My stomach twisted. I pressed my back against the wall, my fingers gripping the edge. The words were so soft I almost doubted I heard them right. But I did. You, what? I muttered under my breath. My voice barely audible, but my heart was screaming. Ryan's response was chilling in its calmness. I know. It's complicated, but you don't have to decide tonight. I can't, she said, voice breaking. I can't. I can't have both, can I? Not if you want to be honest with yourself, he said gently. But you can figure it out. I stepped closer, trying to hear more, but my presence wasn't masked. A sudden sound from the floorboard made me realize I was standing too close. Their heads turned, and for a moment, I thought they might see me. But they didn't. I had to remind myself to breathe. My chest felt tight, like it was being squeezed. All my instincts screamed at me, this was wrong, horribly wrong. But part of me wanted to believe it wasn't. I had to know what was happening, and I couldn't move. You think he suspects? She asked quietly. Ryan's laugh was low, almost smug. About what? She hesitated. About us, about how I feel, about everything. I felt my knees weaken. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself. I wanted to storm in, demand answers, demand honesty, but I couldn't. I couldn't yet. I had to understand the full picture first. You need to slow down, Ryan said. This isn't about losing anyone. It's about balance. Balance, she repeated, voice cracking. I can't even. The last words were swallowed by a pause, heavy and suffocating. And then silence. I wanted to burst through the door. I wanted to scream at both of them. But instead, I did the only thing I could think to do. I stayed quiet. I listened. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds, I couldn't tell. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't want to lose either of you." Ryan's voice softened. "Then don't. Not tonight. Just, don't." I felt my heart break in slow motion. Not the kind that shatters and heals fast. The kind that digs deep and lodges there, uncomfortable, permanent. I felt betrayed, but not just by her, by him too. When I finally backed away, the floorboard creaked again. I cursed under my breath and moved to my bedroom. Sleep was impossible. I couldn't unhear those words. They twisted in my mind like a knife, each repetition sharper than the last. By morning, I forced myself to act normal. Breakfast was awkward. Emily smiled at me, but it was different now. I could see it in her eyes. That tiny spark that had once been reserved for me alone was now shared with him. "Good morning," I said casually, stirring my coffee. "Morning," she replied, faintly cheerful. "Sleep well?" "Yeah, you?" "Not really." She hesitated. Something about the pause made my stomach churn. Ryan joined us with the newspaper. I made sure she had everything she needed overnight. "Thanks," I said automatically. But inside, I was boiling. Every gesture, every smile, every casual glance between them felt like a betrayal. And yet, I couldn't confront them. Not now. Later, I found Emily sitting in the living room, absent-mindedly tracing patterns on her blanket. I tried to talk to her casually. "So, anything special planned for today?" I asked. She looked up, smiled faintly. "I was thinking of reading, maybe some sketching." "That sounds nice," I said. I watched her closely. The way she occasionally glanced at Ryan, the small smile that didn't reach her eyes, it was all wrong. "You've been quiet," she said suddenly. "I have a lot on my mind," I admitted. "Just thinking about work." She didn't question further, but I knew she noticed. I always noticed these things. And I hated it. Hated that I noticed. By afternoon, I excused myself under the pretense of work. I needed air. I walked outside, hands in my pockets, trying to calm my racing thoughts. But the scene from last night wouldn't leave me. Their voices, the words, the calmness in Ryan's tone, it haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking, how long had this been going on? Had I missed the signs? I had trusted them both completely, maybe too completely. And now my trust felt like a weapon against me. When I returned, Emily greeted me with a soft smile. "You're back early." "I needed a break," I said lightly. But my mind was already elsewhere, analyzing every glance she gave, every smile she offered. Ryan, as usual, was nearby. Adjusting her blanket, offering small gestures of care. His presence felt heavier now. Every movement, every glance, every word, it carried a weight I hadn't noticed before. "Don't overthink," I muttered to myself. I needed to believe it was nothing, just my imagination. But the words from the door replayed relentlessly. "I don't want to lose either of you." The day ended with them talking softly in her room again. I didn't hear the full conversation this time, but the tension in the air was unmistakable. I stood outside the door, silent, listening, my body tense. My mind raced, torn between confrontation and observation. Finally, I left. My chest tightened. My hands trembled slightly as I closed the door behind me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The calmness, the casual tones, the quiet laughter, they all felt wrong now. By the time I drifted into a restless sleep, I knew one thing for certain: nothing between us would ever be the same. Something had shifted irrevocably. And for the first time, I questioned not just Emily's love, but my own judgment. I had trusted too much. And I wasn't sure if trust could survive this. I didn't confront them that night. I didn't storm into Emily's room or demand explanations. I stayed quiet. Watching felt safer, somehow, even if my chest ached with every glance they exchanged. The next morning, she smiled at me as if nothing had happened. "Morning," she said softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Morning," I replied, my tone neutral. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Ryan was already in the kitchen, coffee in hand. "She slept well?" he asked, casually. "Yes," I said flatly. "Better than last night." He nodded, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glint in his eyes, like he knew something I didn't. I ignored it. Throughout the day, I kept my distance but watched closely. Every touch, every shared look, every laugh that reached him before it reached me, it all burned in my chest. At lunch, Daniel, my friend, called. "Hey, how's Emily?" he asked. "She's fine," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just, resting mostly." "Everything okay?" Daniel's voice had that familiar edge. He always knew when something was off. I paused. "Yeah." "Why do you ask?" "Nothing. Just, you sound different." "Tired?" "I'm fine," I said quickly. I didn't need him asking questions I couldn't answer yet. After hanging up, I walked past the living room. Emily and Ryan were talking quietly, too close, too comfortable. I stopped in the hallway, pretending to check my phone. I heard fragments: "I don't want to hurt him," and "It's complicated," floating in the air like knives. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe normally. "I'm imagining things," I whispered to myself. "It's nothing." Later, Emily called me to her room. "Come here for a second." I walked in slowly. "Yeah." She held up a sketchpad. "Look at this drawing. Do you like it?" "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely. But my eyes kept flicking toward Ryan. He was sitting close, guiding her hand slightly, showing her a technique. Too close, too involved. "See," she said, smiling faintly. "I'm improving." "You're doing great," I said, my voice calm but my heart racing. After she went to rest, I found Ryan in the hallway. "How long have you been helping her like this?" I asked casually. "Since the accident," he said smoothly. "It's my job." "Of course," I said. But inside, I felt a storm. I forced myself to act casual, but every word I spoke was measured. I had to understand before I acted. By evening, Emily was asleep. I lingered outside her room, listening. Ryan adjusted her blanket, whispered something softly, and I could hear the gentle laugh that had once been mine alone. I wanted to knock on the door, scream, demand answers, but I stayed quiet. I stayed hidden, watching, because I needed proof, not assumptions. The next day, I decided to test the waters. "Emily, can you show me that exercise again?" I asked, sitting next to her on the couch. "Sure," she said, smiling faintly. Ryan moved closer to help her, and my fingers curled around the edge of the couch. "Do you mind?" I asked him calmly. "Of course not," he said, and didn't move away. My chest tightened. I looked at Emily. "You okay with him being this close?" She shrugged, smiling weakly. "He's just helping." I nodded, forcing myself to act normal. But inside, a war raged. Every gesture, every glance between them felt like a betrayal. And yet, I said nothing. I stayed quiet. Watching. Learning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered to the living room, and Emily was awake, sitting quietly. "You're still awake?" I asked softly. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Thought I'd do some sketching." I sat beside her silently. The soft light highlighted her face. She looked beautiful, vulnerable, innocent, but I knew better now. Something had shifted. Ryan appeared at the doorway, holding a small tray. "Water for you," he said gently. "Thanks," she said, taking it. Their hands brushed. I clenched my jaw, breathing slowly. After he left, she turned to me. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said softly. But my voice trembled slightly. I didn't tell her I wasn't. She hesitated. "I feel confused," she admitted. "I don't know what I want sometimes." "I noticed," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "I didn't mean." "You don't have to explain," I interrupted gently. "I hear you." We stayed silent for a long while, the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. I realized that my quiet observation was changing me. My anger, my hurt, it was growing, but so was clarity. I needed to see everything before I acted. The following days passed in a tense rhythm. I watched, Emily leaned on Ryan more, laughed more easily around him. I stayed calm, collected, pretending nothing was wrong while every instinct screamed that it was. One afternoon, Daniel came by unannounced. "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while," he said. "Busy," I replied shortly. But he looked at me like he could see through the act. "Something's off," he said finally. "You're distant." "I'm fine," I insisted. "Really?" He shook his head. "Okay. Just, don't let it eat you. You'll know what to do when the time comes." I didn't respond. He left, but his words echoed in my mind. Yes, I knew what to do eventually. For now, I stayed quiet. Watched. Learned. That night, I found myself outside her door again. Their voices floated softly through the air. I didn't hear everything, but it didn't matter. The intimacy, the closeness, the comfort, they were all there. My hands gripped the wall, knuckles white. I could have confronted them. I could have stormed in, demanded explanations, yelled. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Watched. And slowly, methodically, I began to understand. The realization was chilling, I wasn't in control anymore. Not of her feelings, not of Ryan, not of the situation. But I could watch. I could wait. And I could prepare. By the time I finally went to bed, exhaustion claimed me, but not relief. I lay awake for hours, imagining scenarios, conversations, confessions. Each possibility twisted my stomach, but gave me clarity. I was learning patience, for now. I stayed quiet. I stayed hidden. I watched. And in that silence, I began to see a plan forming, not yet for revenge, not yet for confrontation, but for truth. I knew one thing with certainty: if I acted too soon, I would lose everything. And I couldn't afford that. So I stayed quiet. Watched. Learned. And waited. I didn't tell Emily I knew. I didn't accuse her. I waited until the moment was mine to control. She smiled at me that morning, soft and unaware, but something inside me had already shifted. "Morning," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Morning," I said calmly, keeping my voice neutral. Ryan was nearby, arranging her pillows. "She slept well?" he asked, casual as ever. "Yes," I replied, my eyes fixed on Emily. "Better than last night." Ryan nodded, stepping back slightly. The subtle shift didn't escape me. I'd been waiting for this, though I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Later, Emily asked me to help with some sketches. "Can you look at this? Tell me if it's okay." I walked closer, sitting beside her. It's good, I said, my voice steady. Really good. She smiled faintly and glanced at Ryan. What do you think? Ryan leaned in, offering a suggestion, and I watched their interaction, silent. My hands rested lightly on the table, my body calm, but my mind raced. Why don't you leave it to me? I said softly. They both froze. I'll handle it. Emily looked confused. You want to? Yes, I said. I can do this. I can take care of it. Ryan's expression changed subtly. His calm demeanor faltered for just a second. I noticed. Emily looked between us, uncertainty creeping into her eyes. Later, she pulled me aside. Are you upset? She asked quietly. No, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm fine. But I've been thinking, maybe some space would be good for everyone. Space? She repeated, voice trembling. Yes. Space, I said calmly. I think we all need to step back and see things clearly. Her lips parted. But. Emily, I interrupted gently, I've stayed quiet for too long. I've watched and waited. And now. I need to step back. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. She looked at me, confusion and panic rising. You mean, you're leaving? I'm not leaving completely, I said. I'm just, removing myself from the middle. I can't stay in a situation where I'm uncertain. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean. I know, I said softly. I know. But that doesn't change anything. You can't have both of us. Ryan's face paled slightly. I didn't realize. Exactly, I said, my voice calm, controlled. You didn't realize. And now you see. Emily's hands shook. I can fix this. Fix what? I asked. The trust that's already gone. The lines that have already been crossed. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. And you won't, I said quietly. Not because I'm here to stay. But because I'm finally stepping away. Not from anger, not from spite, but from confusion. From allowing you to play with my trust. Her tears fell freely now. I made a mistake. Yes, I said gently. A big one. And you'll have to live with it. Ryan tried to speak, but I held up my hand. No, this isn't about him. This is about you realizing what's already lost. You wanted both of us. Now you have neither. Emily's sobs echoed through the room. I felt no joy. Only relief. The relief of finally seeing clarity where there had been uncertainty, of finally removing myself from emotional chaos. She reached for me. Please, don't go. I need you. I shook my head slowly. I'm not going anywhere. But I am gone. Gone from the middle, gone from being the one you can rely on blindly. You've made your choice. Her voice broke. I don't want to lose him either. I smiled faintly, sad but firm. Ryan will walk away when he realizes what's happening. And by then, you'll understand that nothing can replace trust once it's broken. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing quietly. I stood there, silent, letting her feel the weight of her actions. No shouting. No confrontation. Just absence. The next morning, I packed a few things, just enough to remove myself from constant proximity. Emily noticed. Panic flashed in her eyes. Where are you going? She asked, voice trembling. Just taking some space, I said. Time to think. For both of us. She followed me, pleading. I can fix this. I'll. Stop, I said calmly. You can't fix what's already broken. You can only realize it. And that realization is yours alone. Ryan appeared then, awkward, uneasy. Not now, I said. This is her lesson, not yours. I left the room, closing the door quietly behind me. No dramatic exit. No slammed doors. Just silence. The silence itself was louder than any confrontation could have been. In the following days, Emily called incessantly, texts pouring in, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't respond. I let the absence speak. I let her face the consequences of her choices. Every time I passed the living room, I watched her look toward the door, hoping I'd appear. She saw my absence, and panic began to take root. Ryan tried to comfort her, but it wasn't the same. He couldn't replace the clarity that my silence forced upon her. One evening, she confronted me again. Why are you doing this? Don't you love me anymore? I do, I said softly. But love isn't enough to ignore betrayal. You wanted both of us. Now you have neither. I'm giving you the space to understand what that means. Her eyes widened, realization dawning. You're serious. I am, I said. Completely. For the first time, I saw her truly afraid, not of losing me, but of losing control. Not of me, but of the illusion she had maintained. The weeks that followed were quiet. I focused on myself, my work, my friends. Emily's presence lingered only in memories and occasional desperate calls. Ryan faded from her life too, leaving her alone with the weight of her choices. I didn't gloat. I didn't seek revenge. I simply lived, quietly, firmly, removed from chaos, watching karma unfold in its natural way. One day, she stopped calling. One day, she stopped reaching out. And one day, the silence became permanent. It wasn't triumph that filled me, it was relief. Relief that I had finally taken control. Relief that I had stayed quiet, observed, and waited for the moment to act with clarity. Sometimes, I caught glimpses of her in passing. Regret etched on her face, the light in her eyes dimmed. But I didn't stop. I didn't go back. By the time Ryan left, she was alone, facing the consequences of her actions fully. She finally understood the cost of trying to have both of us. And I realized something important. Trust is fragile. Once broken, silence and absence speak louder than confrontation ever could. I had stayed quiet. Watched. And when the moment came, I removed myself. She realized too late that I was already gone. Weeks had passed since I stepped back. The house felt emptier, quieter, and for the first time, I felt free. Not triumphant, not angry, just free. I had made my choice, and it was time to live with it. Emily tried calling again that morning. Her texts filled with desperate words. Please, let's talk. I didn't reply. Silence was my answer, and it was louder than any argument. Later, Daniel came by. You okay? He asked, looking at me closely. I am, I said quietly, though I knew he could see through the calm. Finally. He nodded, understanding. Sometimes the best revenge is just stepping away. I smiled faintly. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it for me. That evening, I went for a walk through the city streets. The lights shimmered on the wet pavement, neon reflections dancing like fractured memories. And I realized, I hadn't thought about Ryan in weeks. He had faded as naturally as he had entered our lives. Emily was alone now, facing the consequences of her choices. When I returned home, she was waiting, pacing nervously. Why are you doing this? Don't you care? I do care, I said calmly, sitting across from her. But caring doesn't mean letting someone manipulate you. You wanted both of us, Emily. Now you have neither. Her face paled. You mean it? I mean it, I said firmly. You wanted control. You wanted to have it all. And now, you're facing the result of that choice. She sank into a chair, head in her hands. I didn't think it would be like this. Of course you didn't, I said softly. You never think ahead when you're trying to have it all. But now, you understand. I can fix this, she cried, looking up at me with pleading eyes. I'll make it right. Please, don't walk away. I'm not walking away, I said, voice steady. I'm walking toward clarity. Toward myself. Toward a life where I don't live in confusion and doubt. You can't have both, Emily. You never could. Her sobs echoed through the room. I didn't move closer. I didn't comfort her. Silence carried the weight she needed to feel. This was her lesson, not mine to solve. The next day, she tried to call Ryan. I heard her voice faintly through the phone. Ryan. I need to talk to you. Please. A pause. Emily. I can't. Not anymore, he said quietly. I listened from the hallway, my heart calm. I hadn't interfered. Karma had its own pace. Ryan walked away, leaving her alone with her choices. I watched silently as she crumbled in ways she hadn't before. Not from me, not from anger, but from realizing the depth of her mistakes. Every tear, every regret, every desperate plea, it was deserved. Maya called that evening. Are you okay? She asked gently. I am, I said. Finally. You sound different, she said. Calmer. Stronger. I am, I admitted. I stayed quiet. I watched. And when the moment came, I stepped back. I removed myself from chaos. That's the only way to win sometimes, without fighting. Her voice softened. I'm glad you're okay. You deserve this peace. I do, I said. And I'm going to make sure it lasts. The following week, Emily sent messages, each more desperate than the last. I ignored them all. I didn't need closure from her, and I wasn't going to provide it. Her panic, her regret, it was enough for the lesson to stick. One evening, she appeared at my door. I opened it slowly. Emily. I need you, she said, voice trembling. I can't live like this. Please, just talk to me. I looked at her for a long moment. Her eyes were red, tear-streaked, pleading. But I saw through the desperation now. The trust was gone. The balance was gone. What remained was clarity, for me. I can't, I said softly, closing the door gently in her face. No shouting. No blame. Just calm, deliberate absence. That silence carried further than words ever could. She stumbled back, stunned, realizing the permanence of my choice. She had lost me completely. And for the first time, I felt no guilt. Only relief. Weeks later, I met Maya for coffee. You seem lighter, she said, smiling. I am, I said. It's amazing what stepping back and observing can do. Not everything requires confrontation. Sometimes, absence teaches more than words ever could. She nodded, understanding. And Emily? Emily learned her lesson, I said quietly. Alone, as it should be. Ryan left, she's facing her choices, and I paused, smiling faintly. I finally get to focus on myself. For the first time in months, I felt free of uncertainty, free of betrayal, free of manipulation. I realized that trust, once broken, could never be restored in the same way. But peace, clarity, and self-respect, that could be rebuilt. Emily never contacted me again. Ryan moved on silently, leaving no trace. She learned the cost of trying to hold on to both of us, and I learned the cost of trusting too much. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't vindictive. I simply existed now, in the calm aftermath, stronger and wiser. My choices were deliberate, my boundaries clear, and my heart protected. Sometimes, I wondered what she thought when she saw me in passing, if she regretted it fully, if she felt the weight of her actions. But I didn't care enough to find out. I had already won in the quietest, most satisfying way. One night, I walked along the river, neon lights reflecting on the water. I remembered the chaos, the whispers, the betrayals, the stolen trust. And I realized, I had survived. Not by fighting, not by anger, but by patience, silence, and clarity. The streets were empty, but I felt alive. Peace settled in my chest. I knew Emily had lost both me and Ryan. She had wanted it all, and in trying to hold on to both, she lost everything. And I gained myself. The lesson was simple: trust wisely, love fully, but never sacrifice yourself for someone unwilling to choose. I had stayed quiet. I had watched. And in the end, I had stepped away. That was the victory, silent, absolute, and final.